Hello, and I'm so thrilled to welcome Tom Rath here today to talk about his new book, What's the Point? Turning Purpose into Your Daily Superpower. I'm so thrilled you're here, Tom.
Well, it's good to talk to you again, Elisa.
Well, you talk a lot in this book, as the subtitle suggests, of turning purpose into your daily superpower, and that the theme that I really heard over and over again is turning purpose into how you can help others rather than what you can do for yourself. And I wanted to start this interview off by saying thank you for everything that you have done for the CPPA and for me personally. And three things. First of all, StrengthsFinder changed my life because I was always thinking that there was something wrong with me. And for someone to suggest that there's something right about me and that I could focus on all the good stuff and my strengths was life changing for me. Secondly, your support of our association over the years has just been tremendous. You've spoken at our conferences and you've shared your books, and your support has been incredible. And you even endorsed my book, which was such a great honor for me. So I just have to start off by saying thank you for living a life where you're helping others, and I've been the wonderful and beneficiary of all of your great work.
Well, thank you very much. That means a lot, and it's really fun for me to look back as you talk about it and think about just how far we've all come with all of your efforts and people in your organization that like to move away from that kind of deficit-focused conversation to something that's a lot more hopeful and productive and meaningful for people. So that's neat to see what everyone that's been involved here has been able to do over the last couple decades, where I've been watching it pretty closely.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's been great. So I think everyone who's starting their career or people who are rethinking their career should read this book because it really does give a formula. I love how after every chapter you have questions for people to contemplate and things for people to think about. And I really love this idea of living life more intentionally with regards to purpose. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, at first when I started getting into what people really need to know about having a good career and also about what they need to do to focus on purpose and do more meaningful things in the course of a day, I got into all the research and all the work on it. And about midway through that progress of working on the book, I realized that when most people even hear the word purpose, it gives them more anxiety than it is helpful, which challenged my beliefs and thinking a little bit and led me to kind of step back and say, well, how is purpose really built and why does it give people anxiety? And when I got more diagnostic about it, it was kind of encouraging for me to see that, when you get into the trenches of the way purpose is built and how it executes and how you can do more of it, it's really about what's going on at 8 o'clock in the morning, what you choose to do by noon, the conversations you have with people throughout the day, reflecting on the impact of something you've done throughout your day. And almost all of the purpose in life, I would now argue, is created in the small things we do throughout a day. And purpose isn't some grand thing that happens every 20 or 30 years or descends from the heavens on a sunny day. And it's not something we need to stress out about. It's not something we need to worry about. It's something we need to execute on and make it practical and build it into our daily routine, because that's how we kind of connect that other directedness in what we're doing throughout the day so that we can do more and feel better about it. And um, I've also learned that focusing outward on the purpose that you're having with other people each day is probably a better focal point than saying, what am I doing to make myself happy, or focus on my own self learning or self awareness, which I mean, all these things are pieces that I'm kind of learning as I go here about how we take all these discoveries to the next level for the sake of other people.
Yeah, yeah. It really made me rethink too, because I'm always thinking that big P purpose. And the book really allowed me to kind of contemplate every day, how can I live out my purpose? How can I be doing things to help others? And who do I want to help? And One of the things that you talk about in the book is that you had this cancer diagnosis very, very early. And this one sentence you said, when you face death, you gain clarity. You know, this idea of facing your mortality, it really does kind of make you think about, oh, wait, this is kind of something that I should put in focus and use it as priority. I should prioritize these things and not just say someday.
Yeah, I think the thing I'm most concerned about right now that I wouldn't have been 3 to 5 years ago as much is that I think most people are kind of sleepwalking through their days on average. And so because there's so much stimuli from notifications and emails and social networks and letting the next Netflix show play or whatever it might be, that it's almost easier and maybe sometimes more tempting and enjoyable to just let your life kind of go on autopilot. I was traveling over the weekend, taking my kids around to look at some colleges, and I noticed that when 9 out of 10 people getting off the jetway at the airport, they were so kind of glued into their phones, they almost tripped over bags that people put in the way. And it was just like they were on an assembly line and didn't realize where they were going. And I mean, even though I'm honest with myself, before I got into some of this and tried to rework my day and schedule around it, I think a lot of us, it's really easy to let 30, 40, even 50% of your day go on that autopilot mode where you say, I need to respond to these 25 emails, so I'm going to do that. I need to pay these bills, I'm going to do that. And we let the easy and the things that we can check off jump to the front of our priority list instead of working on more meaningful and more purposeful and more relationship oriented projects that might matter in the long run. And so, coming back to your part of your question about mortality there, I'm kind of concerned that everyone's saying, well, we've always got tomorrow, so I can just sleepwalk through today. And in reality, tomorrow never gets done. And so we've got to find little tricks and ways and kind of hacks to prioritize what matters today, because then you build what Barbara Fredrickson's talked about as those upward spirals where you have traditional or progressively better days one after the next when you're able to do that instead of just going into a deeper state of kind of catatonic sleepwalking or whatever it is.
Yeah. In that those chapters really made me think this idea of I'm spending all my day reacting to all of these things. I mean, I've stopped the scrolling, and so I'm not doing that, but I'm still always reacting. I mean, I could spend my day just responding to people's emails if I wanted to. And my friend and we started to create these blocks of 4 hours every 2 weeks to just create and just create things. But now, after reading the book, I'm thinking, well, wait a sec, what am I creating? And what's the point? What's the
Mhm.
point of creating this? And I love your questions. That if you only had 2 years to live, what would you start immediately? What would you stop doing? Who would you spend more time with? And what would you create? And I really stopped to think about those things. And they weren't the things that I was doing today or tomorrow or next week or the next few weeks. And so I've kind of brought these things that, the answers to these questions forward to say, okay, how can I make these happen in the next 2 or 3 weeks? And so I thought that was very powerful.
Yeah, I kind of stumbled into that, to be honest, where when I look back at my career and try and figure out what's had the most purpose and impact, it's kind of a surprising answer where when we launched the book How Full Is Your Bucket 25 years ago now, the it first that was a business book, and we realized it kind of started to catch on in schools and in K through 6 in particular in the U.S. school system. And it was teachers saying, this metaphor is so simple. I'm going to use that to say, if Johnny's not being nice to Susie, are you filling her bucket? Are you taking from it? And they have better conversations. And now my kids started in a public school in our neighborhood here, and it's kind of the standard curriculum in every school. There's a children's version of it. We created a picture book and so forth. And the reason that worked and resonated so well is because, I mean, you and I talking about it right now, even if there's someone listening to us that's never read the book, doesn't know anything about it, you kind of get it from the title, right?
Yeah.
And so as we start talking about purpose here, purpose is so overwhelming. Career is even overwhelming. So that's why we tried to boil it down to just saying, just ask yourself, what's the point throughout the day? And what's the point of this next meeting? What's the point of the next hour responding to emails? what's the point of a walk with one of your kids or your spouse or a friend or a loved one in a conversation? And the more you ask that and build that into your day, so you're scrutinizing what really matters and what doesn't, it helps you to reallocate your time and build much more purposeful days. So we kind of stumbled into that after a lot of conversations with people to make it a little more practical and diagnostic. But I've been using that for the last 6 or 12 months, and it's really changed not only what I do throughout the day, but the order in which I do things pretty dramatically. And it just simplifies the structure of a day.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to have a little sign right on my computer that says, "What's the point?"
Right.
To
It's
remind me of
amazing how much
everything.
time we spend on stuff that won't make a damn bit of difference a month from now or 12 months from now, let alone when we're gone. Right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You know what else really changed me too is this idea of focusing on who am I helping. And, at the CPPA, I'm helping a lot of practitioners because we always consider ourselves to be like a drop in the pond. That if we're teaching you about positive psychology, you're going to share that in your work, whether you're a psychologist or a coach or a teacher, whatever it is that you're doing with your life. And so, but then I started to really think about who do I really want to serve? Who are the other audiences that I haven't reached out to? So who do I want to help? And I really like that switch that you make. Instead of asking myself, what do you do? Who is it that you want to help and what do you want to do to help? And I think that's been a really good shift for me.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear. I mean, I think anytime we can, not only for ourselves, but for the other people we work with, help them to literally see the face and have a person or a group of people in mind when they are doing what they're doing throughout the day, it leads to more rewarding days, more energetic days, and kind of better altruism and momentum for the future as well. So, I mean, I've spent a lot of time in healthcare with nurses and physicians and radiologists and hospice workers, and my wife's a school teacher, and people in what I would call some of the most surface level meaningful professions from my standpoint as a customer of theirs. And even in those roles, so many times they fail to connect what they're doing each day with the impact it's had. And when they miss that opportunity in a day, you don't get that back either. And so we've got to find better, this is a wonky term, but kind of feedback loops to see the impact of what we're doing throughout the day and orient ourselves a little bit better around that. Because, and then when I do get a note from a reader of a book or someone that's taken a course that I've worked on or a friend that I've helped who's got a parent dealing with a medical challenge or whatever, to really take that in for a minute and not just brush off their praise, which is kind of easier to do, and we do that a lot, but to accept it and own it and say, this is something that really made a difference, and I need to remind myself of that, and that's healthy. I think those are some mechanisms to build into our days that can help, to your point.
Yeah. And I think research shows too that if you connect people in your organization with who they're serving and introduce them to the
Mm-hmm.
beneficiaries, in fact, they work harder and they have higher performance. So there's business benefits to that as
Yeah,
well.
I mean, there's a ton of research on it, but yet managers and companies and leaders are still not quite there in terms of applying it systemically.
Right, right. So one of the things you say in the book is don't focus on happiness, focus on meaning. Can you say more about that?
Yes, I think that the, I mean, there are two things that people chase in life that I would say are generally misguided. Um, well, maybe fame's a third one, but the first one would be that if you're chasing happiness for yourself, I think it's going to be a lot harder to find it than if you spend a lot of time thinking about how do you create happiness and meaning for the people around you and your loved ones and your customers and your clients and your communities. We did a bunch of research on that back in the day when I was at Gallup doing global well-being research. And after everyone went through a broad based inventory on well-being, we asked them, well, how would you allocate this if you were prioritizing well-being between financial and physical and community and career and relationships? And the people who prioritized not only their own happiness, but their own finances the most had the lowest levels of well-being on the back end when we looked at it. The people who prioritized what we called community well-being, which is kind of doing good for other people, they had the highest levels of well-being by far behind the scenes. So I think anytime you can move the needle or the pendulum closer toward doing good for other people instead of working on yourself, it has a greater return. And something that's connected to that, that I think is relevant, especially for the audience that you've spent so much time building and working with, is that there's been a tendency, and we've done a great job in the last 25 years of having more self-awareness and looking at who we are as individuals and looking at our own strengths, which we've both been a big part of and all that. And I think that's great, but I don't know that we've put as much time into the demand side of the equation of what the world needs and what our community needs and what the people around us need. And so I think we've got to kind of push back on that a little bit and say, how can we look more at that demand side and say, what do the people around me need, and then work back to who we are and connect those two, instead of saying, I'm going to come tell you all about me and kind of push as much me into the world. Which, I mean, especially in a tight job market like we have right now, if I have two people applying for a job with the startup I run, and one of them comes in and says, here are all my strengths, here's what I'm all about, here's what I'm good at, and the other one says, I've studied what your customers need, I know all about it, and here's how I can take who I am and meet all those needs. I'm going to hire the second person in about 2 seconds and not even think about the first, right? So
Right.
I think we've got to build a little more of that outward other orientation into not only our self thinking and development, but also into some of those conversations.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is my worth as a consultant. Like when I work with organizations and teams and try to improve well-being, I call myself a professional listener. I just do more
Lovely.
listening than everybody else. I just set aside a bunch of time to interview people and listen to what the needs are. And then if you just listen and do something about what you're hearing, then I think you're right. I think we should be doing more listening because we will know what the answers are and we will know how to show up. We will know how to serve people. And then, I think the hardest part, because I've always wanted to live with purpose. And I think I learned that at a very, very early age. So I kind of crafted my career. The hardest part was figuring out how to make enough money doing that.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think, I mean, what you just said might be some of the best advice I've heard in a few years about just, I mean, if I just had one piece of advice to give to friends of mine, colleagues, parents, I think, I mean, the people who are really good at asking smart and challenging questions and then keeping their device stowed in their pocket and closing their mouth as long as they physically can and just listening and actually paying attention, not drifting, and then helping the people you're listening to see things in themselves that they might not have noticed. I think that will be the real secret to leadership in the next 10, 20 years, and the secret to developing people and being a good friend and parent and spouse and the like. And so we've got to create more discipline about how we all do that well. And I mean, to your question about finding jobs and work, I do have some hope that that will be even more valued because it's kind of the one thing that can't be replaced, and we're going to need a lot more of as people become more siloed in some of the things that they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I found that, if you want to live a life of purpose and you want to make a living at it, because I think the book is great at saying you don't have to have your whole world around your purpose. You can build it into what you're already doing. Even if your job that makes the money that pays the rent and your groceries and everything else, it's not bringing you that much meaning. You can build meaning into your everyday work. So I love that the book doesn't imply that you've got to, join the circus to to go
Right.
and because it's not realistic. I think you even said that in the book, like to tell people go live your passion, and meanwhile they're living just paycheck to paycheck. It's not practical, is it?
No, and I think my advice to my kids now who are not just about college age would be to just throw the whole notion of one true calling out the window. And it's there. Most people enter the workforce and they've seen about 2 out of 50 jobs that are out there that represent half the workforce based on the math I've been doing, maybe three if they're lucky. And so if we have that limited amount of knowledge and exposure to things, there's no way that most of us, 80% of us, are even in the right job right now to start with. We might have been better off flipping a coin and randomly assigning people to careers the way we've done it in our society. So that's in a good way. That means don't be scared of having to try something new and trying 5, 10, 15 different jobs or thinking you're wed to one thing, because especially where things are headed in the future, I think we're all going to be kind of cobbling together different things that we do to have meaning and earn some money and have our money work for us. And it's going to be a little bit different and more variable expectation of what a career is and how it ebbs and flows over time. And I'm not convinced that that's a bad or a scary thing when you look at how we ended up where we are today, which is kind of falling into defaults and parental expectations and societal things.
Yeah, yeah. I like your exploration of that in the book because I think it's true. We're so influenced by our parents and what they do for a living. And but I really like the section on just getting rid of your phone too. Let's not, because people waste so much time just doing things. And you've mentioned a lockbox, and I wanted to show, I have my digital
I
lockbox,
love
and
it.
it has a timer on it. So I can even, keep it locked all night kind of thing if I wanted to. And I remember I brought it to a speaking engagement, and there was a gasp in the room. I mean, people were just the thought of
Right.
locking up their phone for even 5 minutes was just unimaginable to them. But we really are almost addicted to something that's really moving us away from connection and meaning and purpose.
Yeah, the biggest thing I've realized is, and I've done a pretty good job over the last 5 years, I think, relative to most, of having my device stowed away and not making any noises or anything most of my day, just to be able to get creative work done. And I've been zealot about it for 5 or 10 years with kids and family, where when we're at a dinner, the devices don't even sit on the tables, even if they're off and so forth, because we talk openly about the message that sends about this thing comes before my son or my daughter in a conversation or whatever. So I feel like, but devices can do a lot of good things. Devices can help you to be healthier in some cases. Devices can, if I'm in a grocery store line or waiting to get on an airplane, and I'm communicating with someone. I'm not to say devices are just all bad, and because there's a lot of practicality to what we can do with our devices, but at a fundamental level, I think we need to learn how to make our devices work for us and not let our lives be controlled by the device, which has been a big problem. And I would argue that we can also extrapolate that fundamental learning to a lot of things that are going on with AI based tools. And I've spent the last year in kind of in an immersive way trying to figure out how I can make sure that AI is always working for me and helping me to get more done and helping me to spend more time with the people I care about the most and not doing the things that are as repetitive and responsive. And AI is working for me to scale and do all those things so that I'm not just being told what to do by AI. And I think as long as we take that model of using technology with agency, it should be able to work to our benefit over time. And it's kind of empowering to say, that this darn device works for me when I want it to, and I'm not going to let it kind of dictate my life and uh, decide what I do. I was kind of encouraged. My daughter said that whenever her friends who are 17, they go out to dinner, they all do a phone pile off at the side of the table. So they're all just talking to each other and engaging. And so I'm also kind of encouraged, in part because of some of John Haidt's work, that uh, kids are starting to take back some of the power and relationship and control, which is good to see.
That's really good to see.
Yeah,
That's great. So, final question, Tom. What was your greatest learning from writing this book?
it's a good question. I think my biggest learning is that in this day and age, we have to challenge ourselves to always be asking, what's the point of any little interaction? What's the point of something we're purchasing? What's the point of a trip with loved ones? What's the point of traveling for a meeting? And just scrutinize our time and attention and energy and psychological and physical and financial resources in this lifetime, because that's the one thing we all have control over is how we allocate and spend our time. And if we can be even better at using that, not just to our advantage, but to the advantage of the people we care about and kind of pumping more energy and meaning and effort and work and love into the world, that's what really leads to a meaningful life over time that makes a difference for people. And then I guess the anchor for me is always at the end of a book like this is, can we put some things together that continue to grow and make a difference when we're not working on them, or maybe even 10 years from now or after we're gone? And the more you can orient your time and energy in life around things that make a difference when you're not working on them, I think that's a pretty good anchor for people to think about as well.
Well, thank you. That's a great note to end on. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for being here, and thank you for writing such a lovely book.
Thanks so much, Louise. I appreciate it.
See you.